Can a movie look like the future and still die on arrival? Hollywood has burned more than $100 million on sci-fi dreams that were supposed to launch franchises, dominate theaters, and become cultural events. Instead, audiences stayed home, critics sharpened their knives, and studios watched fortunes vanish almost overnight. Tonight, we are counting down the most infamous sci-fi bombs ever made. And number 1 is still almost unbelievable. Number 15. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, 2017. This was not just a movie. It was a neon gamble the size of a small planet. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets arrived with the confidence of a future classic. Dazzling alien worlds, impossible cities, strange creatures, and a budget so huge it practically demanded box office domination. Luc Besson was chasing the kind of grand, colorful space opera that made The Fifth Element a cult favorite. But this time, the scale was much bigger, and the risk was much sharper. The film looked expensive in every frame, yet something crucial never connected. Audiences admired the visual madness, but many did not feel attached to the characters or the story. Instead of becoming a new sci-fi franchise, it became a warning sign. Visual spectacle alone cannot save a movie if viewers do not care who is flying through the stars. Valerian did not vanish because it looked cheap. It struggled because it looked like a universe without an emotional heartbeat. And that made the failure even more painful. Number 14. Jupiter Ascending, 2015. Some movies flop quietly. Jupiter Ascending crashed like a royal spaceship full of money. The Wachowskis built a universe filled with space dynasties, genetic destiny, flying boots, alien bureaucracy, and intergalactic royalty. A sci-fi fantasy so wild it almost dared audiences to keep up. On paper, it had everything: huge visuals, major stars, strange mythology, and the ambition of a franchise starter. But that ambition became its biggest problem. Instead of pulling viewers into a clear, thrilling adventure, the movie overwhelmed them with names, rules, bloodlines, and cosmic politics before they could emotionally invest. Critics mocked its odd tone, audiences seemed confused, and the expensive world-building failed to turn into mass excitement. Yet here is the twist. Jupiter Ascending is not boring. It is too much. Too shiny, too strange, too serious, too ridiculous, all at once. That is why its failure still fascinates people. It was not lazy studio product. It was a massive, expensive swing that missed so loudly you could hear it across the galaxy. Number 13. The Matrix Resurrections, 2021. The Matrix came back from the dead, but the audience did not follow it through the door. The Matrix Resurrections carried one of the most powerful names in science fiction, a franchise that once changed action cinema, internet culture, visual effects, and the way people talked about reality itself. Bringing Neo and Trinity back should have felt like an event. Instead, the film landed in a strange cultural fog. Some viewers respected its self-aware, almost rebellious tone, but many others expected a sleek blockbuster continuation and got something more reflective, messy, and deliberately uncomfortable. The movie questioned nostalgia while also depending on it, and that contradiction divided the audience fast. Its huge budget made the response look even worse, because this was not a small experiment. This was The Matrix, returning with history on its shoulders. But in the end, the brand that once felt dangerous and revolutionary now felt uncertain about why it had returned. Resurrections did not just underperform. It proved that even legendary sci-fi names can lose their power when the mystery fades. Number 12. Tron, Ares, 2025. Disney went back inside the machine, and the machine did not print money. Tron Ares arrived carrying decades of digital mythology, sleek neon imagery, and the promise of bringing one of sci-fi's most visually iconic worlds into a new era. The Tron name has always had a strange place in pop culture. Famous, stylish, influential, but never quite as massive with general audiences as studios seemed to hope. That became the central danger. The movie looked like a premium sci-fi event, but expensive nostalgia is not the same thing as urgency. For many casual viewers, Tron was a brand they recognized more than a story they were desperate to continue. That gap matters. A film can have glowing bikes, digital landscapes, and high-tech style, but if audiences feel like they can skip it, the budget becomes a trap. Tron Ares showed the harsh reality of franchise revival. Sometimes the studio remembers the brand more passionately than the public does. And in sci-fi, cool visuals mean nothing if the crowd never logs in. Number 11. The Marvels, 2023. For years, Marvel made space battles look like guaranteed money. Then The Marvels hit theaters, and the guarantee broke. This was not some unknown sci-fi gamble from a small studio. It came from the biggest superhero machine in modern Hollywood, connected to cosmic powers, alien worlds, and a cinematic universe that once turned almost every release into an event. But by 2023, the audience mood had changed. Viewers were tired. The franchise felt overloaded, and many casual fans seemed unsure which shows or movies they needed to watch first. The Marvels had energy, color, and likable moments, but it arrived at the wrong time in the Marvel cycle, when curiosity had turned into homework. Its box office failure shocked the industry because it proved that even a famous logo could not force people into theaters forever. The real story was not just one movie underperforming. It was the moment the Marvel brand looked vulnerable. The Marvels became a cosmic warning. When audiences feel exhausted, even superheroes can look strangely small.
Number 10. Stealth 2005. A fighter jet with artificial intelligence should have sounded terrifying. Instead, Stealth became a high-speed box office crash. The movie had all the ingredients of a mid-2000s blockbuster: military hardware, young stars, explosions, global danger, and a futuristic weapon that could think for itself. The idea was simple and marketable. What happens when the machine built to protect us decides it knows better? But the execution never created the tension that premise deserved. Instead of feeling like a chilling sci-fi thriller about technology slipping out of human control, Stealth often played like a loud action movie searching for a soul. The budget was enormous. The marketing pushed spectacle, but audiences did not treat it like a must-see event. Critics were harsh, word of mouth was weak, and the film quickly became a symbol of expensive Hollywood overconfidence. What makes Stealth fascinating now is how relevant its concept became later. Artificial intelligence is a bigger cultural fear today than ever. But this movie had the idea early and still failed to make people care. Number 9. Mortal Engines, 2018. A movie about giant cities eating each other should have been impossible to ignore, and somehow, almost everyone ignored it. Mortal Engines had one of the strangest and most visually exciting premises in modern sci-fi. A future Earth where mobile cities roll across ruined landscapes, hunting smaller towns like mechanical predators. With Peter Jackson's name attached as producer and co-writer, the film looked like it had franchise potential stamped all over it. The trailers promised scale, danger, strange technology, and a world unlike anything else in theaters. But that originality became a double-edged sword. Audiences did not know the books well enough, the characters did not become instantly iconic, and the movie's enormous world-building arrived before viewers had a strong emotional reason to care. Instead of becoming the next big young adult sci-fi saga, Mortal Engines became a spectacular cautionary tale. It looked expensive, moved fast, and still felt oddly distant. The tragedy is that the idea was bold. Cities on wheels devouring each other is pure cinematic madness. But without a gripping emotional engine underneath, even the wildest machine can run out of fuel. Number 8. Moonfall 2022. Roland Emmerich literally dropped the moon on Earth, and audiences still shrugged. Moonfall sounded like the kind of disaster movie madness that should have sold itself in one sentence. The moon is out of orbit, humanity is doomed, and only a desperate mission can uncover the impossible truth. That is pure blockbuster bait. Emmerich had already built his reputation on destroying landmarks, cities, planets, and audience expectations, so this should have been another loud, popcorn-ready global panic event. But by 2022, viewers had changed. The old disaster formula no longer felt automatic, and Moonfall's huge scale could not hide its weak emotional pull. The movie wanted to be ridiculous fun, but it also asked audiences to invest in wild mythology, massive twists, and characters who never became as exciting as the destruction around them. Its budget made the failure brutal because this was not a small, guilty pleasure. This was a gigantic sci-fi spectacle that needed crowds. Instead, it became proof that bigger explosions do not always mean bigger interest. Moonfall aimed for the sky, crashed into the box office, and left behind one painful question. How do you make the moon boring? Number 7. Strange World 2022. Disney built an entire hidden universe beneath the surface, but the audience never dug deep enough to find it. Strange World was a colorful, animated sci-fi adventure with explorers, strange creatures, family conflict, and a message about legacy and environmental responsibility. On paper, it had the ingredients of a heartfelt Disney event. But in theaters, it landed with almost no cultural thunder. The problem was not that it lacked imagination. The world was weird, bright, and visually playful. The problem was that audiences did not feel urgency. The marketing struggled to make the story feel essential, and the title itself sounded more like a vague description than a must-watch adventure. For families, it was easy to skip. For sci-fi fans, it did not feel bold enough to become an event. For Disney, the result was painful because animated films are supposed to build emotional attachment quickly. Strange World had beauty and ambition, but it never became a conversation. It disappeared almost as soon as it arrived. In a crowded entertainment world, that may be the worst fate of all. Not hatred, not outrage, but silence. Number 6. Borderlands 2024. This was supposed to be chaotic, loud, colorful fun. Instead, Borderlands became a warning label for video game movies. The franchise had name recognition, wild weapons, strange planets, violent humor, and a built-in fanbase that should have given the film a strong opening shot. Add recognizable stars, expensive effects, and a dusty sci-fi wasteland full of attitude, and the studio clearly hoped it had a new franchise starter. But the movie arrived feeling strangely late to its own party. Fans questioned the casting, casual viewers did not seem convinced, and the finished film struggled to capture the reckless personality that made the games popular. Instead of feeling dangerous and fresh, it felt like a noisy brand extension that never found its rhythm. The box office response was harsh because audiences now expect video game adaptations to respect tone, lore, and fan identity. Borderlands had the budget, the weapons, and the title, but it lacked the spark that turns chaos into entertainment. Its failure proved a brutal lesson. Gamers do not just want costumes and references. They want the soul of the world they already love. Number 5. Chaos Walking 2021. A world where everyone can hear your thoughts should be terrifying. But Chaos Walking could not make audiences listen. The premise was genuinely fascinating. On a distant planet, men's thoughts are exposed through a visible and audible force called the noise, turning privacy into something almost impossible. With Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley leading the cast, the film had young star power, a built-in science fiction mystery, and the kind of high-concept hook that should have attracted curiosity. But behind the scenes, the movie became trapped in delays, reshoots, and uncertainty. By the time it finally arrived, the momentum was gone. Instead of feeling like the launch of a major new sci-fi saga, It felt like a project the studio no longer knew how to sell. The central idea was powerful, but the storytelling never made the emotional danger feel as intense as the concept promised. Audiences stayed away, and the huge budget turned a quiet release into a loud financial embarrassment. Chaos Walking had thoughts everywhere, but no clear voice. And for a movie about noise, its box office failure was painfully silent. Number 4, Mars Needs Moms, 2011. Disney did not just send a family movie to Mars. It sent millions of dollars into deep space and barely got a signal back. Mars Needs Moms was built as a big motion capture sci-fi adventure, the kind of animated spectacle that was supposed to mix emotion, comedy, alien worlds, and family-friendly danger. The idea sounded simple enough. A boy realizes how much he needs his mother after Martians abduct her for their own strange society. That should have had emotional power. But the movie arrived with a visual style many viewers found cold and awkward instead of warm and magical. The characters moved with expensive technology, yet somehow felt less alive than traditional animation. Families did not rush to see it. Children did not turn it into a playground obsession, and adults had little reason to recommend it. The result became one of Disney's most painful animated failures, not because the concept had no heart, but because the execution created distance where there should have been attachment. Mars Needs Moms wanted to make audiences cry about motherhood, childhood, and regret. Instead, it became a brutal reminder that animation is not saved by technology alone. If the faces feel empty, the theater seats often become empty too. Number 3, The Adventures of Pluto Nash, 2002. Some flops disappoint. Pluto Nash became the kind of disaster Hollywood whispers about, like a financial ghost story. Eddie Murphy was a major star. The budget was enormous, and the setup had comic sci-fi potential. A nightclub owner on the moon gets pulled into a futuristic crime plot full of gangsters, clones, robots, and lunar weirdness. It sounded like the kind of oddball space comedy that could have become a cult favorite. But when the movie finally reached theaters, it felt strangely lifeless. The jokes did not land with force. The futuristic world looked expensive without feeling exciting, and the story never gave audiences a reason to care about the chaos. Even worse, the movie carried the weight of a massive production cost, so every empty seat looked like a headline. It did not merely underperform. It became one of the most lopsided box office collapses ever attached to a major star. Pluto Nash is fascinating because it shows how celebrity power has limits. A famous face can open the door, but it cannot force people to laugh, buy tickets, or forgive a weak movie. This was not just a bomb. It was a lunar crater.
Number 2, Megalopolis, 2034. This was not a normal studio gamble. It was a legendary filmmaker betting a fortune on his own impossible vision. Megalopolis arrived carrying the name of Francis Ford Coppola, a director associated with some of cinema's most towering achievements. That alone made the project feel historic. But the movie itself was never designed like a safe, mainstream crowd pleaser. It was strange, philosophical, theatrical, futuristic, political, and deeply personal. The kind of sci-fi epic that asks audiences to follow symbols, ideas, and ambition instead of simple blockbuster momentum. That made it fascinating to film lovers, but risky for general viewers. With a huge reported cost and a story that refused to behave like normal commercial entertainment, Megalopolis entered theaters already surrounded by curiosity, confusion, and skepticism. Some saw it as bold. Others saw it as baffling. But the box office told the harshest story. Most people simply did not show up. The tragedy is that this was not lazy franchise product or empty studio machinery. It was a passion project on a massive scale, and that makes the failure more dramatic. Megalopolis may be remembered, debated, and defended for years, but financially, it became a monument to artistic risk colliding with modern audience indifference. Number 1, John Carter, 2012. If Hollywood ever needed one movie to prove that money cannot buy audience interest, John Carter became the ultimate warning sign. Disney spent a fortune trying to launch a grand sci-fi adventure based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' classic Mars stories, material that had influenced generations of fantasy and space adventure. On paper, it had everything: alien civilizations, desert battles, giant creatures, romance, prophecy, and a hero transported into a world of impossible danger. But the marketing never made the film feel essential. The title became vague, the connection to Mars was softened, and casual audiences were left wondering what John Carter even was. Was it a Western? A superhero movie? A space fantasy? A historical adventure? That confusion was deadly. The movie itself had scale, sincerity, and moments of old-fashioned wonder. But by the time viewers discovered that, the box office damage was already done. Disney wanted a franchise. Instead, it got one of the most infamous financial misfires in modern blockbuster history. John Carter did not fail because it lacked ambition. It failed because ambition without clear audience excitement becomes dangerously expensive. And that is why it deserves number 1. The movie reached for Mars, but its marketing barely reached Earth. And there it is. 15 sci-fi dreams built with blockbuster money, futuristic worlds, famous names, and sky-high expectations, only to collapse when audiences refused to care. Some were misunderstood, some were messy, some were simply too expensive to survive. But which flop deserved a second chance? Drop your pick below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay curious.